Hey, welcome to the Build Groups podcast, where every week we bring you insights and information from the very best leaders in the industry throughout churches and consultants who are working to bring the best value to you as a leader in your church. My name is Nick Edwards. I'm the host of the Build Groups podcast. Honored to be a part of this with Adam. Today on the show, we have Jay Vineyard. Jay, really do appreciate you being a part of the show today.
Well, thank you. I'm privileged to join you.
Jay, you are the groups pastor at Dogwood Church, where we're actually hosting our National Small Groups Conference coming up in Atlanta next month. It's going to be an incredible opportunity. So just want to first say thank you so much for being host to this event.
Well, we look forward to hosting, looking forward to having our colleagues in ministry here. So we're looking forward to a great experience.
So I know that you have been partners with Build Groups for a while. Just kind of start off, tell us kind of what your experience has been with Build Groups. Then I want to be able to get into your story and hear more about your journey of ministry.
Sure. So we had a transition. I actually stepped into this specific role. I had a different responsibility at Dogwood. And in about 2022, I stepped into this particular role at our church. And when I did, I thought, and began to ask, how do we build a pipeline? You know, we had a really strong small group system that was growing, but how do we get a pipeline that when we had an opportunity, we had people on the bench, people that were ready, that we could put into place to begin groups. And so we tried to create our own, and it worked well. It was okay. We were able to start groups, develop our leaders. But then in November of 2025, well, actually, we got an invitation. I found the link for the Build Groups conference, a new organization, never heard of you before. But as I looked at it, I thought, well, this might add value to us. So let's just take a look and see what is there. So my team and I went. And at that time, we had onboarded a new team member who has even more responsibility, just the day-to-day responsibilities of our groups. So we went. We were really looking at the vendors, looking at possibilities, and we just came across content that Build Groups had called cohorts, and also the opportunity for Adam to provide coaching to us. And we jumped in both feet. We asked Adam to coach us. We use the content that has been developed to start a cohort system that we are in our first session, and that has added great value to us. We have about 10 new group leaders that we're ready to release probably in August.
Man,
so it's been a very beneficial experience for us.
That's good. Well, Jay, tell me a little bit about your ministry journey and how you ended up in this position at Dogwood. You said you transitioned from another position. Tell me a little bit about your ministry journey.
So you can tell I'm a little older. I'm 64. So if I go back to my life in the 1980s, when I graduated from college, interestingly, I never have the churches and organizations I worked for, I never applied for the job. I was just asked to go. And so my first learning experience between seminary and college was at a church called Santam Baptist Church in Atlanta. There, a guy named Dr. Alan Purdy was a pastor, and he successfully integrated the church. Took a lot of courage, and I noticed his leadership style. He still remains my mentor. And actually what happened with Alan is that he was working as a doctor of ministry, but he felt called to do medical missions. And so I went to Southwestern Theological Seminary, and he went to Emory Medical School with 4 kids. And we've stayed in touch. And like I said, he's still my mentor. So when I went to Southwestern, and in my mind, I thought the path was pastorate. Now, in our day, when I came along, church was very predictable. You had Sunday school, And there's only about 5 rows that you had in the church, but yeah, Sunday school, you had a sermon, very predictable sermons, same type of worship style, hymn book driven. And so, you could be a pastor, you could be a worship or minister of music, you could be a minister of education or a missionary. And that was about it. And so went there and came out, pastored a church in Marietta, Georgia. And then from there, I went to another church as a minister of what we call stuff. I did education, youth, just a lot of stuff, but it fit my personality.
Is that where the job description has that little asterisk, other duties as assigned?
Yeah, and I was okay with it because I'm a little ADD, and so I get a little bored with the predictable task of the day, and so I always look for new opportunities, new ways to grow. But it was during that time I really began to look at my life and said, there's something missing. There's a gap. I had the theological education, and I began to explore an emerging topic called leadership. And not a lot was written in the mid 90s, not a lot, particularly in the church world. But I began to invest in it. And then in 1999, the Georgia Baptist Mission Board, Georgia Baptist Convention, called and asked if I would come and help provide content material training to pastors, to staff, to current leaders to help their leadership competency. And that was probably the most rewarding season of my life because I was able to be exposed to content that most could not get to, but I was able to bring to things like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the Franklin Covey material.
Sure.
But then eventually I came across content that really helped me frame leadership. And it's called Lead Like Jesus, and I still teach the material. Lead Like Jesus. In 2001, Kim Blanchard is a follower of Jesus, and he brought this out. And he really challenged us to say, hey, the definitive role model of leadership is Jesus Christ. I mean, think of it, did anybody do it better than him? That's our role model for leadership. And so I really got my arms around what does that really mean? So since 1999 to 2014, I was working with pastors in the state. I had opportunities to go to countries like Russia. You can blame me for what happened to Russia. I guess I didn't get a good job, but Russia, Moldova, Haiti, and every place else. And I was teaching these concepts, and it was just a life-changing experience for me. But things were changing in our workplace, and starting in 2008, the economy was pretty tough, and it affected our work as we are dependent on the gifts from churches to the cooperative program. Downsized, but I knew my season was over. You could just see it. My season was over, and during this season of time in 2010, I actually came to Dogwood Church as a member. First time I ever looked for a church, by the way. Didn't know how to do it. How do you look for a church? So we came to this church. And so we enjoyed it. We loved Dogwood as members, loved serving here. And in 2013, Pastor Keith Moore said, hey, Jay, what would it look like for you to join our church? I thought, man, it'd look pretty good. I mean, why wouldn't I? I mean, I love the church. Why wouldn't I want to serve the church? And so we made the transition, and that time I had the responsibility of helping people find where they're going to serve, but also built the pastoral care system. So that's what I like to do, is build. And so I did that starting in 2014. But then I started getting a little itchy, and I needed a new task, new assignment, new responsibility, and I actually thought that would involve going somewhere else. But we were looking for a small groups pastor, we call a fellowship minister here. And they said, why don't you jump there? And I said, why don't I? And so I jumped in, and it has been a growing experience of how to lead small group ministry. It's been very rewarding from that perspective. So that's a little bit about my background and how I got to this particular seat.
Man, I love it. a few things that you said in there that I think are really important and key takeaways for people to be able to hear and kind of lean in on is number one, you understood that different ministries had seasons to them, and
That's right.
every ministry is going to have an ending to that season, and there's going to be something next. Now, there are the few people who are in the same position for 25, 30, 35 years, but for the majority of people who are called to ministry, there's going to be a season, and to be able to end well is incredibly important. Now, the other part of that is it's not every 18 months that a season should end.
That's right. That's right. You know,
that's not healthy either.
That's not, it's not. But here's what we do is that we come with it open-handed.
Right.
If there were ever a theme song, and my wife and I talked about this, if there was ever a theme song that defined our life together, our marriage, it would be called I Didn't See That Coming. Because every new move that God did, we didn't see it coming. We sensed something was happening, but we tend to grasp and we tend to hold what's known. We want to hold it, but whenever you come and you say, "Okay, God, I my hands are open to you. I'm going to do the very best at the assignment that you've called me to do." It's just interesting what God does, and not only that, but inside of the work that we're doing.
Absolutely love that.
Because again, if you go back in our traditional structured experience of my traditional structured experience, it was Sunday school. And it's a great model, by the way. Sunday school is a great model, great way to do ministry. But we said that was on the way. Well, all of a sudden, a new model emerged that was good, and it helped. Both models are great. And so what we want to do is say, okay, God, I'm not only am I open-handed in my career, my life, but how I'm doing my job, because changes are coming, and I have to be open to it.
Man, there's so much humility in that, and trusting God in that, and just going, it's not my ministry anyways. I'm just trying to be a steward of what God's entrusted me for this season. Man, Jay, I love your heart and hearing your heart in those things. I think it's so incredibly important that pastors and ministers of all ages and all parts of ministry need to continue to go back to that place and hear and remember that truth.
Right.
The other thing I heard that you said was you began leaning into leadership when it really wasn't a thing at the time, but you were leaning into what does personal leadership look like? What does leadership development look like, both personally and within the church, within the organization? You talked about having 7 habits of highly effective people. You've talked about some of these other things. What would be, if you had to pick, maybe 1, 2, 3 books or resources that you think every leader should read? What would those be?
Oh yeah. So I might put it underneath the heading of writers, authors that I have I've read. Mark Miller is one that everybody needs to pick up his books. Mark was a member of Dogwood Church. He was one of the instrumental founding church leaders at Dogwood Church, worked for Chick-fil-A corporate. And during the early seasons of Dogwood's life, our church is almost 40 years old. Mark worked for Chick-fil-A, but then he also served as the executive pastor for a short season. So that's him. Mark is a great follower of Jesus. Well, he has a son that is some pretty difficult disability, so he moved to a different part of town to care for him. But Mark was a leadership guy at Chick-fil-A corporate. He knows a thing or two about leadership and has written a number of books for leaders. He wrote on The Secret Teams. I mean, just teamwork, leadership. Is anything you can get on Mark Miller, you ought to pick it up. One of the most revealing books that because he and I have talked frequently, and I've been, anytime he teaches, I'm there. But he wrote a book called The Talent Magnet. Now, the background talent magnet is that Chick-fil-A was facing a little bit of a crisis on their stores. First time they ever had it, of how do you get top talent and keep top talent in the stores. Now, they've not faced that before. No one has studied it. No one has studied how do you attract and keep top talent. But when he did the research, he said, Jay, I had the church in mind here. And so that book is well worth, because we are all in the church world. One of our everyday digs is, how are we going to get talent? How are we going to get people to move into volunteer roles? So well worth the investment. So Mark Miller is one of them. Patrick Lencioni is another guy that I have thoroughly enjoyed through the years. Jim Collins is another writer. And so those are some of the bigger names. There's one that just escaped me. It's on the tip of my tongue. I'm sorry. I'll probably come to me later on this in a moment. But what I find is that leadership is a gift. We know that. Romans teach it. It essentially says, if you're the gift of leadership, lead with all diligence. But leadership is a skill that has to be developed through a lifetime.
Okay, say that one more time, just in case anybody missed that. Say that one more time.
We understand that leadership is a spiritual gift. Romans teaches that. Essentially, I said, if you have the gift of leadership, lead with diligence. That's what Paul said. But leadership also is a skill that can be developed over time. Absolutely. It takes effort. It takes discipline to lead well. There are two really big issues that keep us, and I mentioned Lead Like Jesus. That's been an organization that's spoken well into my life. Our pride and our fear are our two biggest enemies as leaders.
So good.
Our pride and fear. They will limit your leadership and your effectiveness, and they're so subtle. In our life, we don't even realize that they are, but our decisions are made by it.
Yeah, I wrote this last week and was working through some things, and one of the things I wrote was that, so I want to make sure I actually say it right this time, that we often mask our fear as humility, but humility is thinking more of others, and fear is thinking less of our God.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
a good word.
We often mask fear as humility. Well, I'm just being humble. I don't want to do too much. No, but if God's called you to lead, you need to lead diligently. And if God's called you to step out, you need to not allow fear to keep you from believing that God's a big enough God to handle all those worries, all transitions, all the unknowns that He's already prepared a way. And so that means we have to step out in faith.
Yeah. So if you look at my Mount Rushmore of influential leaders in my personal life, I have three guys that are on it. Ellen Purdy, as I mentioned, is one of them. Most courageous leader, godly leader, wise leader that I've ever met. He never made it to the mission field because he had teenagers when I got through medical school. Went to Rome, Georgia, practiced medicine, but also interim pastored churches, if you can imagine that. And then my current pastor, Keith Moore, are there, and then a guy named Benny Pate. And I looked and I said, okay, what is that about those three guys that sets them apart in my mind? The sense of humility. But the other thing that's apart is their convictions of God's word. But courage. That's the other thing for all three of them, was this courage that was driven by this faith-filled life that says, okay, God's called us to it. Let's go do it.
And that's so good right there. I think that's a reminder to so many people that just need to, they're on that edge and they're wondering, what's this next step? What's the unknown? Is it a ministry change, or is it taking the next step within this ministry to be proactive in something? That we need to have this humility and faith that leads together and allows the heart of God to lead us past our fears, past our insecurities, to
Right.
faith and humility.
That's right. And so, in our leadership, not only do we need to have the competency, that's the growth, the competency to develop others, but you also have to have the confidence to lead. Well, who's going to grow your confidence? Well, that's where you get people around you that are mentors that help you in that area. But that takes humility, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that I've learned, so for me, John Maxwell's one of those guys, just continue. I've been part of the John Maxwell leadership team and a certified coach, trainer, and speaker for his organization. It's just been life-changing because it taught me how important it is to invest in myself and to develop myself, and at the same time have enough humility to bring other people into my life that can speak into it. It's all the same principles that you're talking about that lead like Jesus, of who are you surrounding yourself with, and are you always developing yourself? And I think it's the investment that has the greatest return. That if we invest in ourselves, when we invest in our spiritual growth, when we invest in our leadership, it's going to continue to pay for years and years.
That's right. That's right. By the way, I just thought of the other guy's name for everybody to read, Paul David Tripp. He just came to me. Yeah. What a wonderful moment. I just had that clarity. But here's what we need to think about of ministry also is, what am I doing to grow and learn? Because how we're doing ministry is radically different than what we've done in the past and will be different in the future. I had a young...
Continue to change.
Yeah. So I had a young man that asked, what's the value of an education? I said, well, it teaches you to think. I said, because if you go back to my day, when I graduated from college, Pluto was still a planet. Well, somebody kicked that out, And then, everything that was so fundamental of education, well, it's changed so much, what we've learned and grown. And so what keeps a person growing and engaged is, how am I growing? What am I learning? Having people speak into my life. So you always have to grow because how we're doing ministry today, how we're doing groups today, it's probably going to be different in 5 years.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. One of the things I've thought about lately, and I'm still kind of chewing on this idea of, in this ever-changing world, and it's changing very rapidly. And so you talk about going from Sunday school kind of only option back in the 80s and 90s to small groups. And now there's all kinds of hybrids between the two for churches. But what's it going to look like in 3, 5, 7 years? It's going to be much different. And one of the things I realized is the need for information. Our phones have all kinds of information, right? AI has given us all the knowledge, but it doesn't teach us how to process that knowledge and how to discern that. And so one of the things that we're going to see in the days ahead is not just the need for knowledge, but the ability to have discernment with that knowledge, and how do we connect with others?
That's right.
We live in a world with AI and technology that, you're 1,000 miles away and we're able to have this conversation. But the need for personal touch is never going away.
That's right.
The need for personal connection is never going away. And really what it comes down to is love God and love others.
That's right. Yeah, AI is going to shift us a little bit. Well, probably, we don't know how much, but it will. But I'll give you an example of one of the conversations. One of our pastors was working out, and this guy that was pretty big at Google was working out with him and involved in the emerging AI world. And he looked at him and said, AI is going to take your job. Well, it might change our job, but here's what AI can't do. Is AI going to show up at the hospital when a child is dying?
Yeah.
Is AI going to sit and talk with the person making life decisions? No. And so wisdom and discernment, as you said, is something that I think we're going to have to lean in on in the future.
And it's going to be more and more critical, especially, you talked about having a seminary degree, to have a biblical foundation, to spend time in the Word so that you have the Spirit who can help you discern truth and lies, because that's really what we're facing at a faster and faster rate, is the lies that are coming at us, and how do we discern from the truth. And you're right that there are certain things that it can't replace. You can have a hologram up there preaching, but it doesn't have soul, and it doesn't have a connection with God. It doesn't have this intimacy that I've spent time with God, and now let me share what God's taught me through this time.
Yeah, because I'm preaching in a couple of weeks, and I'm just kind of curious. I've enjoyed ChatGPT because, man, if I got to pop out an email in a heartbeat, chat helps me. It helps me on some level. I just wish it would help me remember where I put my keys in the morning. But so I put the theme. I said, here's what I'm preaching on, man, chat came out with a good sermon. I mean, it was pretty good. I thought, that's impressive, but it's not mine. I didn't wrestle through it. I didn't internalize this, because that's what happens whenever we teach or preach. You really wrestle with it.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. If you can think back about times you've preached throughout the years, and some of the sermons that maybe weren't the most meaningful to the congregation, but they were the most meaningful to you, are the ones that you actually wrestle with the Word of God the most.
That's right. So yeah. So this is a great season of life. This is the best season in front of the church, I think.
Love that.
And I'm looking forward. I don't know how much longer God's going to let me do it. In my mind, I know my dad worked till he was 86, and I thought, well, why not? I mean, this is the best profession. Can you guys just think about this? Every day we get to get up and do ministry. We get to touch people's lives every day. Isn't that great?
Jay, okay, I've got to lean into this for a minute, okay? What you're talking about there is joy of ministry. What you're talking about there is going to work with a purpose and ministry, a calling. But so many pastors out there, and I know you've talked to them. I've talked to so many. I could just tell you story after story of young guys, 20s and 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way, that are dealing with what they call as burnout. So how have you overcome that? And being at this stage of ministry, what advice, wisdom would you tell the person who's really just struggling with burnout?
All right. So actually there are two enemies for us on this topic. There's burnout and there's cynicism. And they're kissing cousins. All right. So burnout happens when the demands are so difficult. You're burning a lot of energy. You're staying up late. The demands are hard, and you get to a point of emotional, physical exhaustion, and you just say, I don't think I can do this anymore.
Yeah,
and that's one thing. Cynicism is whenever we get hurt in doing ministry. You're going to get hurt. There's going to be hard things. And all of a sudden, you will notice that you stop loving people. You're critical. You're critical. There's no joy. And both of those, I have found, happen way too often to people. So let's talk about burnout. Well, we are a church of about 1,300 people that show up. We're super close to the Atlanta airport. We got a lot of pilots. We got a lot of Chick-fil-A corporate. We got a lot of people around us. So 1,300 people, depends on what the weather is. A lot of stresses. There's a lot there. In ministry, you can work up to 80 hours, but it would be to your detriment. You just can't do it. So here's what you have to do, in my perspective. Number one, we a lot of times we read the Bible in preparation to teach or preach, but we don't read the Bible for us. Okay, that's a danger. All right, so that's one thing. The consistent pattern of prayer, and here's what happens. We get up in the morning. What's the first thing we do? Well, let's just check. And then all of a sudden
45 minutes later.
45 minutes later. So you need a safe harbor for your soul. In other words, you need a group of people for you and your wife, or spouse, husband, for some of the ladies, that one are truth tellers that can help you have perspective, that can tell you, hey, you really are being a jerk at this moment. Okay. But also will listen to your stories and just have fun. Just have fun together.
It's so good. There's so much great wisdom in that.
Yeah.
One of the things I've learned for me just through this process is that we don't, we say we're taking a Sabbath, whether it's our Friday, we're taking off as our Sabbath or whatever, because kind of the church told us to take off that day. But Sabbath isn't just taking a day off. It's resting in holy presence. And it's holy rest, not binge watching or going fishing or just sitting on the couch. It's actually resting in the presence of God.
That's right. That's right. Well, even think about the application of worship. Well, we are typically leading worship, right? That's such an energy drainer. I mean,
sure.
And if you're teaching, wow, you're exhausted at the end of the day. But do we worship? All right, so we're sitting there, music's going, our worship leader. For me, my thoughts when I'm about to teach, my thoughts are not what are we singing here. My thought is, okay, I got to say this, I got to say that. Oh, I got to get up on the stage, kind of thing. They're waiting on me. And so the need for worship, but also here's what I would highly encourage you to get your church to do for you. We started this at Dogwood. Once a quarter, everybody gets a soul care day. Now, that's not a day where you go, I had to tell some of our team members, that's not where you go to get your pedicures or manicures. That's not that day, right? It's not that day to go golf. It's not that, it is that day where you go and you sit in solitude.
Oof.
Okay, that's that day. Now, we need golf days. I don't play golf, but we need those fun days, right?
Sure.
We need that. I'm talking about something very, very different now. I'm talking about, that application, that principle of experiencing God in solitude, which Jesus did with a high degree of frequency.
Absolutely.
So those would be some of the things that I think help. But truthfully, for ministers, loneliness is one of our biggest challenges. The lack of friends. In 2000, Christianity Today came out with a survey about the mental health of ministers, and it's a little older. What is it, 26 years old now? It's a little dated. But I think the findings are still really what I still see. But it suggested that half of the ministers today struggle with some level of depression, just because how hard ministry is. Even more revealing, 3/4 of ministers' wives were identified as profoundly depressed. Think about that. Wow. So,
and if she's your helpmate and if she is hurting, she can't be a helpmate, which means that you're not at your best, and the cycle just continues spiraling down.
That's right. That's right. But that just kind of the story of how ministry is one of the most stressful jobs in the world. I'll give you a story. When I first started out, this goes back to 1984. After college, I'm at Sandtown Baptist. I was invited to a Rotary Club appreciation meal, and they held it at this barbecue place. So that's how much they loved us, right? So I'm sitting there. Well, they invited this guy that was a retired Air Force pilot. That in his retirement, he went to seminary. His passion the church. So this guy in his career, he flew fighter jets, and he was shot at. Well, he goes, guys, ministry is the hardest job I've ever had. I'm 22 years old, and I thought, oh no, this guy was shot at. He flew fighter jets, and he's telling me that ministry is harder than that. Well, it is hard. It is hard.
It is a weight to be carried. I mean, Paul says in Corinthians that besides the everyday weight of the churches that I carry. And so there is a weight with it, but it's not our weight to carry. And I think that's the difference. And over the last 4 or 5 years, I've had to meet with CEOs of national companies and sitting in boardrooms with high-level leaders, sitting down with pastors of small churches and large churches. And what I realized is exactly what you just said. So many are lonely. And when you're at the top, you feel like I can't share anything with anybody, but you've got to find someone. You've got to find someone who's in your corner, someone you can vent to. I told a CEO of a company a couple weeks ago, I said, listen, sometimes you need to yell, scream, and cuss. Sometimes you need to cry and pray. Whatever it is, you've got to have someone that you can do that with.
That's right. That's right.
I think you're right on that.
And typically that person is probably out of your church. They're probably not there.
Really, for me, it's my favorite part of my job as a church consultant is just sitting down with pastors and going, how you doing? The door's closed. It's just us. Let's talk.
That's right. And that's what I do now. And when I was at the convention, I was, the put your arm around somebody, say, hey, you're not alone in this. You're really not alone. But it does require humility, but it also takes an effort to cultivate friendships. But you've got to have that safe harbor of your soul. Yeah.
I love that word. I'm going to steal that word from you, Jay, that safe harbor. I'm going to use that now. I think it's a great word.
It's not unique to me, but I'll take credit if it helps. But no, it's something that I have come across a number of times. But don't we all need that? Don't we all? Yeah.
Yeah. And Jay, thank you so much for being a part of today. I love pastors who have this great amount of wisdom and knowledge that goes along with experience. We need knowledge of the word. We need understanding of the word. We need to be able to move forward in faith. And this practical life of being in ministry and what it means for young guys and guys that are in the fight and in the battle to guys who are just trying to end well, that these are truths that everyone needs to hear. So right. I've got one more question for you. We're hosting the National Small Group Conference at Dogwood Church in the 1st of August. If someone's on the fence, whether they're going to come or maybe even bring their team, what would you tell that person?
Well, I can tell them that first, we benefited from it last year. We got some content that was very helpful for us in our small group system. That's one draw to you. The second thing is it does put you in an environment where you can have conversations around small groups with other guys that are doing ministry. It's that learning opportunity. You always have to learn. You always have to put yourself in an environment where you can grow. So it's where you can go and you can learn from other guys. Hey, how are you doing ministry here? What are you learning? How are you growing? The conversations that happen in the room. You guys can come see Dogwood Church. We're 40 years old. You can see how we do ministry. We'll tell you we're not perfect, but we're healthy. And so we love for you to come and be part of that. But if that's not it, here's the other part of it, man. if you come, just come up to me. I'll take you to get coffee. How about that? We got some good coffee shops around here. And if you say, man, let's go drink coffee, and Jay, let's talk. Buddy, I'm here for you. I am looking forward to meeting you before you get here. So those are some of the big draws. You learn something, you get into community, and hey, you might get a good cup of coffee out of me. How's that sound?
Man, I love you. I'm going to personally take you up on that one.
There you go.
So the National Small Group Conference is an incredible lineup of leaders who are going to be investing in leaders who are right there on the front lines of small group ministry. Atlanta's coming up in August. Dallas is coming up a couple months after that. Whether it's going there for the information or going there to connect, you need to be a part of these things, because this is where you continue to expand your circle of influence, expand your circle of other guys who can be a part of the conversation with you. And so, Jay, again, thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you for being a leader who continues to invest in other leaders and being part of the Build Group Network. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you.